Okay.
So let me just introduce you a little bit, Anna. So this is Anna with her translator helper, Katja. And they are both teachers in this school in Ljubljana, Slovenia. And Anna's been part of the school for, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years, 9 years, but she's taken a couple of years off to have children. So she's here today to share with us one of her favorite topics. So I'll turn it over to you, Anna.
Se upravičujem, ampak bom kar v slovenščini.
Yeah, she will speak in Slovene and then I'll translate.
Okay. Torej, zadnje leto sem se izobraževala o formativnem spremljanju.
She took a few workshops on formative assessment in the past year.
Tako da je to moje prvo leto, ki sem ga v bistvu preizkusila tudi v razredu.
This is also her first year that she was able to apply it to her lessons in school.
Tako, zato vam bom na primeru v videu pokazala, kaj to sploh je.
In the video you'll see what it is, and you will see one example from the class of how to do it.
Zato me na začetku zanima, če ste že kdaj slišali o formativnem spremljanju ali ne. Se pravi, preverila bom vaše predznanje o tem.
So first we will check your prior knowledge if you have heard of it before. So formative assessment, if you know anything about it.
Tako, torej, če o tem veste veliko, pa ste že o tem kaj slišali, boste dvignili prst navzgor.
So this means you know a lot about it. You know what it is and how it works. You will put your finger up like this.
Če veste nekaj, ampak ne uporabljate še recimo v razredu, date na sredino.
You've heard about it, you know a bit about it, but you haven't used it in class. And then you don't know anything about it.
Yes, thank you.
So show us your fingers so that we can see.
Okay. Oh, one,
okay.
Two.
It's quite mixed. And some of you we can't see. That's okay.
Okay, good. To zame pomeni, da mi bo super govoriti o tem, ker vidim, da večina boste o tem prvič slišali.
So it's nice to see that this is new for quite a few of you, so it's exciting to share something new.
Tisti pa, ki ste dvignili palec gor, mi boste pa pomagali, ker ste sigurno tudi eksperti v tem že.
For those of you who have your fingers up, you can help her with explaining things and maybe sharing your experience with it.
Okay, pa bomo začeli z video.
We'll start with a video. I'll share my screen. 1 second. Sound, okay.
Today, I will show you how to use formative assessment in class using an example from our art project. The goal of formative assessment is to monitor student learning to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. At the beginning of the lesson, we identify or set the goal and purpose of this lesson. The students were already curious at the beginning of the lesson because they had to bring empty boxes and other materials to school without knowing what they will be used for. Here I'm giving the students Lego figures and asking them, what could we use them for? How do they fit in the boxes? What could the boxes represent in relation to the figures? They said that the boxes could be places or rooms where we would place these figures. They were right. They recognized the goal of this lesson. We were making rooms out of boxes for these figures. In this part, we checked our students' prior knowledge. As you can see, they were raising their arms up, showing a certain amount of fingers. 3 fingers up meant they had made rooms out of boxes before, and they know how to do it. 2 fingers up meant they know how to do it, but they need some instructions. 1 finger up meant they had never done anything like it and they don't know how to do it. Most of the children put 2 fingers up. Only 3 students put up 3. I invited them to share their experience with us. How they did it? Were they happy with the final product? And was there some room for improvement? We made a decision that it would still be best to set up our assessment criteria together so that they'll be able to make the best product possible. Then we looked at 4 different pictures of rooms made of boxes, some that were nice, some that weren't as nice. I put them in different places around the room, and they had to pick one that they liked the most and stand next to it. We then counted the number of students standing next to each picture and then focused on 2 pictures, one with the least and one with the most number of students standing next to it. We first looked at the one that no one chose, and I was asking them questions about the room, what they think of it, if they can clearly see what the picture represents. A lot of them said no because there was no furniture or things in it. There were only pictures glued on the walls, no actual things. Then we looked at the picture that most of the children picked, which is also the one that we would use for setting our assessment criteria. This room was full of furniture and things and objects and details. You can clearly see what it represents, that it is a room. We focused on the background, on the walls, furniture in it, all the details, and then continued with writing down the assessment criteria together on the whiteboard with the children. The children were very involved with setting the criteria, giving their ideas about what they think is important and so on, except for 3 students, the ones that put 3 fingers up at the beginning of the lesson, meaning they think they know exactly how to make this room. Some students were a bit surprised by that, asking them why they had started when they haven't heard the rules yet. The criteria needs to be clear and precise so that the children know what is expected from them. This way they'll be able to evaluate their work once it's done. And of course, there should also be lots of room for their creativity. There are a few things that should always be added to the criteria, which we've learned from our past projects, such as being thorough with your work, mindful of using glue, paper, and other materials, and to clean up after you're done. This as well is an important part of the creative process. Now that everything is clear, the children can start with their work. As you can see, the assessment criteria stays on the whiteboard, so they can check it anytime. Last but not least, it is time to evaluate our work. We did this the next day because the work itself took a lot of time. As you can see, I drew 3 smileys on the whiteboard, and the students helped me explain what they mean. Happy face meant I followed the criteria. The second one meant I partially followed the criteria. And the last one, the sad one, meant I did not follow the criteria. We used them to complete the evaluation table that each student got. As one student pointed out, there's always room for improvement. This is why at the end of this table, there's always a place to write down what we could improve next time. Now we can see the final product. This one meets all the criteria. This one as well. This one is from a student who had started with his work early. The students are all checking their products and evaluating it. Now we will take a look at our evaluation table. This student met most of the criteria, but of course she also noticed some things that could be improved next time. She wrote down that she could help others more and that she could be more mindful with using the glue. This is the final product of a student who had started with the work early. You can see that there are quite a few things that could be improved. He wrote down that he could be more precise with gluing things and that he could add more details. This is an example of a final product that meets all criteria. She wrote down that she really likes it, her final product, because it meets all the criteria. She also added that there is, of course, always room for improvement. Now we have completed the process, from setting the goals, checking prior knowledge, writing down the criteria, doing the work, and in the end, filling up the evaluation table. This isn't the end though. Next time we do an art project, we would check our evaluation table and try to make sure we improve the things we didn't do last time.
Okay. Sedaj bom pa najprej vas vprašala.
A lahko, oprosti, lahko sam še rečem, rabimo nekoga, ki bo delal zapis. Oh my God. We need somebody who's going to take notes. Because I already did it last time. Who's willing to do it? We need somebody else.
I asked Mona to do it, and she's doing it. So.
Oh, sorry, didn't hear that.
Okay.
Okay, po tem videu bi rada vas vprašala, v bistvu, če bi lahko mi razložili, kaj za vas pomeni formativno spremljanje oziroma kaj ste v videu opazili.
So now, after seeing the video, I would like to ask you what formative assessment is, how you perceived it, what did you see in the video? How is it different from what you would normally do when it comes to evaluating the children's work? Anybody?
One of the things that I noticed in that was that it was based around obviously a collaborative effort between the teacher and the students, but the students were forming really their own criteria for what was important based on what they saw and thought was good, thought was not as good. And then they could choose to produce their project according to that criteria that they had helped form.
Thank you. Yeah. Jaz sem si vedno želela v bistvu, da se otroci ne bi nekaj delali zato, ker jaz od njih to zahtevam, ampak da vedno lahko spremljajo svoj napredek, da ne delajo nekaj zaradi neke zunanje spodbude, zaradi ocen.
I never want children to do something just because I told them to do it and the way that I wanted them to do it, but I want it to come from them.
Ja, da ne delajo niti zaradi ocen.
And so they don't only do it to get a good grade. So when they set up their own criteria, it gives them motivation to do it, right? Because it came from them.
Zato tudi jih vedno sprašujem, kaj je cilj ure, da imajo vedno pred sabo ta cilj, ki mu sledimo.
And I keep reminding them of the goal of the lesson. What is the goal?
Potem pa oni dajo ideje, kako pride do tega cilja.
And then they give ideas on how to get to the goal.
Could you go back through how the children set up the criteria? I didn't quite understand the process.
Kriteriji so bili,
So this was the evaluation table that they each got. So this is for this exact project, right? So it depends on what you're doing, but this one is that I have colored or glued the background, the walls of the box. I cut out or drew a window. The room includes at least 7 things. The furniture is big enough for the Lego figure. I was precise with gluing and cutting. I was mindful with the glue. My room includes lots of different details. I cleaned up after myself without the teacher telling me to do so. I was happy to lend things to other students. I finished my project and I'm proud of my work because I did my best.
Te kriterije smo si postavili glede na že narejene izdelke. V bistvu lahko bi imela njihov izdelek, ampak ker smo to delali prvič, sem imela primere drugih učencev iz druge šole.
So these were the rooms that she used at the beginning. So she showed them to the children. These were examples from another class because they haven't done it before. And they, based on these, they were able to see what they like, what they didn't like. To si ti pol naredila potem, ko so oni vse to povedali? A to si ti sama?
To so merila, ki so bila na tabli, sem jih pretipkala. Da so ista merila.
So they came up with all of this based on the pictures that that she showed them.
Včasih naredimo plakat in plakat visi v razredu, ampak tokrat sem pisala na tablo, da je bilo hitreje.
Sometimes they also make a poster that they put on the wall.
In ta poster nas spremlja še naslednje leto z istimi merili.
And it stays there, so next time you do a similar project, you're reminded of what you've come up with already. And
lahko dodamo kdaj še kakšno merilo, če...
you can always add some criteria if you feel that there's something missing. And I think this is the important part. What could be improved next time? That's what we always check next time you start doing something similar. We've got
This is a wonderful project. I'm wondering, did you have any opportunity to ask the children to compare other projects where they didn't do this, where you didn't run them through the formative evaluation? And did they compare in such a way that they realized that they gained so much by doing their own criteria and then checking themselves against the criteria?
Če ni skupnih meril postavljenih, potem vsak otrok posebej pride spraševati, kaj točno.
If you don't set the goals together, then each child comes to you separately and they ask the same questions quite often. So in this way, it's all clear.
In lahko popolnoma samostojno delajo, ne rabijo učitelja zraven, če so merila napisane.
And they can do the work by themselves. They don't really need the help of a teacher. Ampak rekla je v bistvu, če si se z njimi pogovarjala o projektu, kjer niso imeli tega, pa zdaj, ko so imeli, če se je njim zdel, če je bilo njim to boljš.
Nisem se z istimi, ampak ker pa sem prejšnja leta delala po drugačnem načinu, pač nisem upoštevala formativnega spremljanja, vidim, razliko, koliko sem jaz manj obremenjena sama in kako so oni bolj se počutijo varne znotraj teh meril.
So she didn't talk with the students, but she could tell from her previous years where she didn't use this method of how, they didn't use her as much. She was she didn't need to explain things over and over again, and how they were they felt sort of safe because they knew what was expected from them. Exactly what was expected
Vsi imajo
from them.
občutek, da so uspešni na koncu, ko vidijo te.
And at the end, they all feel proud because they've reached the goal.
V ospredju je trud, a ne, da dosežejo ta merila.
Yeah, so it's about working hard on getting to the goal.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I was wondering, the 3 students who started the project on their own, so did they reflect later on that they could have waited for the rules and to know, what the things were required, and that would have made their project better?
Se pravi, oni, ki so prej začeli, a so pol bili tako, božje bilo, da bi počakali, ali...
Ja, videlo se je, da izdelek pač niso bili zadovoljni, ko so videli, da nimajo vseh veselih smajljev.
Yeah, you could see that they were not happy, especially when they evaluated themselves, because they didn't get a lot of like happy faces. And I guess when they saw other kids' final products,
Tudi ostali. Na koncu pri tej uri sicer nismo povratne informacije dajali en drugemu, so samo sebe ocenili, ampak večinoma pa tudi en drugemu podamo povratno informacijo in s temi merili tudi sami lažje povejo mnenje o izdelku.
So we didn't do this here, but quite often we would also, like the student would sort of evaluate their other students' work, so their friends' work as well. And this helps them give an opinion that isn't only based on like, if somebody's your friend, you're just gonna say, oh, they did a great job, but this helps them really think about it and give an evaluation to the other children.
That's more objective, evaluation. That's more objective.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember many, many years ago reading about a, educational study where they discovered that students did much better on exams if they knew what they were going to be tested on, if they knew what the questions were going to be. And I remember having one of those duh moments, of course. And this is the same sort of thing. And even better because they're creating the criteria for how it's going to be evaluated. And when you know what that's going to be, of course, you can have a much better chance of meeting it.
And I think when the students don't meet the criteria, like if they don't know what exactly they have to do, they can be quite angry at the end. Like, oh, why did I get a bad grade? I think I did everything. And then you have to explain, oh, but you could have done this, but I didn't know. So with this, you don't have that at the end, right? Because everything's there. Yeah, Klepa.
So somebody asked, I'm curious to know how it gets implemented in more academic subjects. Assessment in the form of projects can be an idea. Katja, do you have pictures of, those projects that Bhakti did with their children? Stepa, Savannah, the desert.
I don't have those pictures, no.
Okay. But it's an example of how you could use. I don't think Bhakti used this formative assessment, or maybe she used parts of it, but they were in their curriculum that was for geography, or it was was it biology? they basically created their own models of how steppe looks, how savanna looks, and you know, it involved the body and the feelings, and you know, I'm sure setting out criteria. The end results were great, but unfortunately we don't have the pictures to show.
Any more questions, maybe?
Sama vedno poskušam v pouk vključevati umetnost, tudi v akademske predmete, zato ker skozi vsa orodja zrelosti.
I always try to include arts, even with more academic subjects.
Zato ker skozi različna orodja zrelosti, ne, tako kot
Gašper, kako so orodja zrelosti v angleščini?
Tools of maturity.
Tools of maturity. Aha. Še enkrat povem.
Z uporabo orodij zrelosti otrokom ostane več znanja in
So this way you can also use all the tools of maturity.
In odkar pač vključujemo učence v to akcijo učenja, vedno predlagajo, da se nekaj ustvarja ali pa odigra neko igro vlog.
Čakaj, kaj sem na začetku?
Odkar jih vključujem v akcijo.
Because I include them in
pouk,
in the lessons in different ways. It could be setting the goals. They always like to include things that are related to art. I think all students want more art lessons.
Yeah. Zanima me tisti, ki ste dvignili prst gor, da pač, če imate za podeliti kakšno vašo izkušnjo, kako vi učite.
I would like to hear from people who had their finger up at the beginning. If you have your own examples to share, your own experience with it. Maybe from the classroom. Maybe not.
Nobody had their finger.
Yeah, Bharati, go away. No, I mean, that sounded wrong. Go on.
Well, maybe it was totally
away.
appropriate. I was just thinking back, I haven't used that process per se, but other things that were very similar. And I taught first and second, sometimes third, fourth, whatever grades here in Portland in our Living Wisdom School. And we did parts from a program called, just a minute, it'll come to me, Children's Engineering, and about how you could teach principles of engineering through the arts really frequently. And part of what we did was before we started, they would write down, so we incorporated writing and reading and everything together, but they would write down what their plan was for whatever they were going to create. For example, when we were learning about levers, we made bear puppets. So they'd have a bear outline and then the arms would move up and down when you pulled the strings and the legs. But they had to tell ahead of time what they thought they were going to do. And then after we finished the project, they filled out a form similar to what your evaluation thing was, but it included things like, this is what I did, this is what worked well, this is what didn't work well, this is how I got around that. You know, it's like, well, that leg wouldn't move or else it'd whoop up into the head or whatever. And then, you know, and it always ended with, I felt proud of myself when, you know, so we'd have sentence starters and then they could go, because first and second grade, many of them are not going to be fluent writers yet. So trying to make it a little easier, but just going through that process and having them evaluate whatever they did based on some criteria that, again, they had helped create some of that, because we looked at things and went, well, you know, how could we, what could we learn from this? Anyway, it was really fun and I found it really valuable.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Бих додала, ако го проверим.
The closest I ever came to doing what you're suggesting, which is wonderful, was I used what we called a rubric. And I was teaching English, language arts. So I would use the rubric for their writing. And the rubric literally was a list of those kinds of things in any writing assignment that would be important. And we would go over it as a class. So for example, we would talk about, you know, what kind of content are you looking for? We would talk about structure. And then the last and the most difficult would be style. And then together we would talk about this in class. You know, we would break it down. What are the things that go underneath each one? So that would be before they ever put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. And then, so they would have that next to them as they were creating, not that they would go through it systematically, but just as a reminder, everybody's creative process is different. Then at the end of it, when they handed it in, they had to attach that to their writing sample. And then I would read the writing sample. And then I would follow the rubric for them independently and tell them what my opinion was. And then they could compare it. And I found that that was helpful for them because, you know, when you get to things like content and organization, and then you get to style, and that's so different than the other, which is more left brain, and then you're in right brain. I thought it was helpful to the degree that they took advantage of it, but I haven't done what you actually did. I see the value in it.
Thank you.
Veronica asked a question. Anna, what was the most challenging for you? Any advice how to start? Se pravi, katere so tiste stvari, kaj ti je bilo najtežje, no? Največji izziv in kako začeti?
V bistvu v Lili, že v samem našem konceptu Education for Life se mi zdi, da je veliko prostora za tak način dela, tako da nisem...
So I think that in our school there is a lot of space for
za tak način dela.
For this
For formative assessment.
for this kind of work, for using formative assessment in class.
Tako da moram reči, da mi je formativno spremljanje prineslo več dobrega kot izzivov.
So I got more good out of it. I didn't get that many challenges compared to the good that comes out of it.
Najbolj je to, da so učenci se morali navaditi na to, da so bolj vključeni, več govorijo, več sprašujejo oziroma oblikujejo pouk.
The students had to get used to the fact that they're being more involved in the lesson and that they have to think more and that they're asked more questions and all that.
Me pa še vedno sprašujejo, zakaj vedno ti na začetku ure poveš cilj oziroma zakaj moramo mi to vedeti.
And they always ask at the beginning, why do you always tell us what the goal is? Why do we need to know that? Sometimes.
Ampak so na koncu hvaležni, ko vejo, kaj so se naučili oziroma znajo preveriti, če so se to naučili.
But at the end, they understand why. And they're grateful for it.
Moj nasvet je, da najlažje je začeti pri umetnosti, vsaj jaz sem tako začela.
My advice would be that it's the easiest to start with art. That's how I started. She started.
Ampak na koncu ugotoviš, da lahko uporabljaš povsod, recimo, ne vem, pri pisanju, lahko že samo.
But at the end, you can see that you can apply it in many different subjects. For example, writing.
Recimo, učenje črk. Ne vem.
Yeah. Like learning how to write properly with the younger students, of course.
Mogoče pri akademskih predmetih že samo delo, ko delajo nekaj po skupinah, je super postaviti kriterije, ker enostavno potem točno vejo, kaj rabijo narediti.
Yeah, even with like academic subjects, if they do like group work, it's always easier when they know exactly what to do.
In na koncu učne snovi se vedno sami preverijo, ni potrebnih veliko testov.
And at the end, when you are finished with a topic, they can evaluate themselves. So maybe even like with other subjects, you can even just do like, what are we going to learn this month?
Ja, včasih se preverijo svoje znanje in si označijo s temi smajli, potem recimo po koncu ure isto označijo in še potem čez nekaj časa, ko spet preverjamo to znanje.
Yeah, so they can do this at the end of the lesson when they're done with one project.
Še pred znanje. Ja. Okay. Še ko je preverjajo pred znanje, pač kaj oni že znajo o tem.
So when you're checking their prior knowledge, they can already check what they know. And then when you're finished with the topic, they reevaluate what they've learned. And then after some time, if you're doing an exam, they can go through it again.
I didn't know the name of I didn't recognize the name of formative assessment, but when you're talking about it, I realized I did do something similar with, these are the high school kids, of course, but we were writing papers for a course. And before we started the papers, we had a session of what do you think goes into a good paper? What makes a paper interesting to read to you? And we made up a series of, I guess you would call them criteria. And then they wrote the papers, and then the papers all had to be what we called peer reviewed. So instead of sending the paper to me, they sent it, you know, that we arranged that different people would get different people's papers, and they would review the paper based on those criteria, and then send it to the writer, and then the writer had a chance to rewrite the paper with those suggestions before it got back to me to get a grade for the course. But it was a very powerful, involving approach.
Ja, saj mislim, da je v samem konceptu naše učne ure zastavljeno to, da se vedno evalvira na koncu, kaj si se naučil.
Tako EFL, mislim.
EFL, ja.
Yeah, I think that it's in the concept, let me še enkrat povem. Da je v samem konceptu EFL-a tudi pomembna evalvacija na koncu. Yeah, that evaluation at the end is important to EFL. So this is just a way to get there, to do it.
I would like to share, I use this kind of method with the youngest group this year for when they were making the declamation of the poems. This is like 6-7 years old children. And I used it for the declamations of the poems, and also for the public presentations of some project, not public, but in front of the classmates. They don't know how to write well and stuff, but they would they were really successful in evaluating themselves and their schoolmates. They would I did a little bit more input in the setting of the goals. But now after your presentation, I have new ideas how I could motivate them to make more of the input. But it was really nice to see them how they would use the vocabulary that was needed to evaluate the declamation of a poem, like if it was loud enough, if it was the tempo was right, if the body gestures were included, and stuff like that. So they would repeat it like 10 times because there are 10 students in the class. So with repeating it every time that each classmate had a presentation, they would internalize also the goals. They had to do it 10 times in, I don't know, 2 days. So it's really nice to see how it becomes usual, like normal to them, and like they are relaxed with it and they don't feel pressure anymore at the end if you do it more time about what the schoolmate tells about them, like how, yeah, which is really important for this for youngsters, what their friends think about them, no? And here it was more what they think about their work, not about them personally. Yeah, this was mine.
Thank you, Anya.
I was thinking in the area of instructional design, formative evaluation means not exactly what you were doing, but rather checking how the people are doing, how the students are doing along the way. And that's in contrast to what they call summative evaluation, which would be like end of the term test. So I was really delighted when you did your presentation and you showed that it's another way. I would, as an instructional designer, I think I would say that now I see there are 2 kinds of formative evaluation. Instead of just the teacher making the test, what you've done is show that the students could make the test, or let's say the criteria. And that gave me an idea in turn. What you've done is you've embedded a skill. You've helped the kids to learn how to evaluate and not just how to do whatever you call Legos in a box. And so now I think you both got into this a little bit. Now they can do this in any other class. They know how to evaluate. So if you go further and you want to look at what does it mean to apply, what is the difference between understanding and comprehending? And you go forward, anybody who knows about Bloom's taxonomy would know about that. So we could embed skills, maybe go beyond just the life skills that Netai has so very well done, but now we could embed other skills like how to evaluate, how to apply, how to comprehend, and so forth, based on where the children are in their age groups and their stages of maturity. It's kind of an exciting, I think Swamiji called what you've done something seminal. You've kind of dropped a little seed, and now we can take it even further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have about 10 minutes left. Maybe some of you would like to just share a little bit more about the Lila School, how it's set up, how it functions, just kind of more generally, because the people who aren't from Slovenia don't know.
Do you want me to say something about it? Or
Sure, I'd be happy
do
to.
you girls want to? Okay. So the school was formed 9 years ago, and it started as a homeschooling course. For the first 4 years, we have been running it that way. Of course, we were in the process with the ministry of getting their recognition. But the recognition, which basically means that our schools who complete their school years, or the entire school in general, it means that it is recognized as any other public school. That's the first side of recognition. The second side is, of course, the financing. And the first 4 years, we didn't have the accreditation. Our children had to pass final exams at
Той
their...
загадай за кой последкът, сам не зазделя. А бош космичите руменя грис.
Marusha, a nas slyšíš? Okay. Yes, and then the program was written. In the first 4 years, the program was written, and it was then processed by the ministry. We had to do a few corrections, and then after the 4th year, when also NITAI flew in and stood there with us, as a support column, it finally got through. And when the program was confirmed, then we had to have the premises and the qualification for teachers. And so we got accredited in 2017. Everybody who passes our school is recognized just as any other school. And this year, the 9th year, is the first year where our children finished the entire school from 1st grade to 9th grade. And now in September, they're going to high school. High school here is age, 15? I think it's 15. And we currently have one school in Ljubljana. We had 2 other schools in the past. One was in Novo Mesto and one was on the coast. The one on the coast only lasted 1 year because there were only 4 children and we couldn't make the ends meet. The other one in Novo Mesto lasted for 3 years, and we basically had to close it down because we had some bad luck with the premises. To get a recognition, it's very important to have the proper premises, and we tried 2 different ones, but none of them worked. But right now, we're in the process of opening up the second school in Maribor, which is our second biggest city. We were hoping for some bigger numbers, but we're really starting with just 5 or 6. And in the process, because we believe we're going to have proper premises this time compared to Novo Mesto and Isola, we will begin the accreditation process right away. So if things goes well and you can send some positive energy towards it, we certainly wouldn't mind, we will begin the accreditation process, and if it goes well, the next year basically we will have it, and which will then attract way more children. That was one side. When we with Ayur1 talked about establishing a school in India, we believe it does help to drive more children and on at least some level help alleviate the anxiety parents have enrolling their children in a different school. Because it's supervised by the ministry, and it pretty much they get the same, not result, they get a completely different result, but the paper they get is worth just as in the public school.
You share how the finances work with the government?
Yes, the finances works as follows. We get 85% of what every other public school would get. except we get 100% on everything that is mandatory, like Slovene language, math language, and science classes and stuff like that. Everything that is mandatory in public system, we get financed 100% in terms of employing people to actually teach it. And for after school activities or morning care, we get financed 85%. But we don't get financed anything on the premises. Every private school has to supply their own premises, completely from their own checkbook. And this is why, in general, when you sum it all up, we have found out that our school is basically 60% financed from the ministry, and the parents pay 40%.
There's a lot
Any
of
other
nodding
questions?
heads from the people who don't have any government support at all.
Yeah.
It'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
Another advantage is that they don't need to go to the national exams every year. Before the accreditation, each student had to pass exams each year for all the subjects at the public school, which was also a lot of work and energy going to it, and now they don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, also when we were required to do that, when kids were required to do that, we were much more obligated to follow the public curriculum. At the end of this year, this is exactly what you're supposed to know. Now that we're accredited, we don't have to follow it as rigorously. We can, decide to do that now, and we're gonna leave the other subject for the next year because it's gonna be much more in tune with other stuff, the other part of the curriculum that we have. Yes, and the final exams for the first three grades is just Slovenian math. It's not that big of a deal, and from grade 4 to 6 it was English. So 3, but then when you cross into the 7th grade, you really have to pass, I think it's like 9 different exams at the same time. It's like in a very short period of like 2 weeks or so. So it's way more difficult than what we had to go through when we were in high school with Matura, or it's really incredible what they expect. So for us, it's working quite well that we got this recognition, but of course, it also means way more reporting to the ministry, way more administration that we would otherwise have. But all in all, I think it was a very good decision. Yeah. Okay, I believe our time is up, and we need to switch to the other one. Absolutely.
So the other group should be joining us in the next minute or two, and we'll have our summary statement from.
Oh, we can just stay here?
You can just stay here. You don't have to go anywhere.
Ah, cool. Yeah. While we're waiting, since we don't have to go into any other room, does anybody else have any question compared to, about the things I just said? Okay, cool.
I loved hearing it because I've always wondered. I've heard the government has some role, but I was never clear on it. So that was really helpful to me. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, they basically want to know 3 things. First, you have to have your own program. And, for us to have our own program, we had to do something different than public schools. And of course, EFL principles were perfect for that. This is how basically EFL principles were where the idea started in the first place. It wasn't let's make a school, but it was, when Tina traveled to the United States to Ananda village, she was like, and Nita can share a story about that. She was like, oh, I wish we would have a school like that. And I believe, Nita, it was you, wasn't it, who said, why don't you make one? Why don't you start one?
I think it was Shivani. It's a good idea.
Oh yeah, it could be somebody else. I don't know. I always thought it was you. But you know, at first it was an idea from the Moon. How do you even start your own school? But you know, over time she connected with colleagues at work, the institute, and you know, idea developed. And so basically, first you have to have your own program. Second, you have to have premises. And this is a topic that is we are getting to know very loose. You know, it's supposed to be very exact, but the more we read in the law and the more opinions we get on this topic, the more it is evident that they don't have much rights to request, because we have a special program. But anyways, you know, they have to be good enough for, you know, them to sign, yeah, you're all right, and they have to be good enough for us, obviously. And the third one is, of course, the staff. But we are the ones who write the rules for the staff, and the rules basically are: everybody has to go through an Education for Life training, and there is some educational minimum, but mostly are the three rules, you know, that were shared so many times before. You have to love the children. You have to be aware that you don't only teach the children, but children also teach you on a continuous basis. And what's the third one?
Nobody knows.
Oh, the third one was, but we're really discovering this. The third one was that you have not been employed at all, or at least not too long, in the public system. Because whatever you learned, it takes some time to unlearn. But we are finding out really that there are some fantastic teachers in the public system which are trying their best to apply, you know, principles like Education for Life principles, but they're just too limited to apply them. So if you find teachers like that, it's not a problem to bring them from the public sector. Those were the three rules, other than the training. Yeah. Okay.
That's what we're finding here in India, that there are people who are yearning to be EFL teachers in the system. They're actually teaching, and all they need is a little encouragement to say, wow, you're doing a great job. So yeah, we found some people like that too. Okay, so we got everybody back, I think. So who was the scribe for Irene's presentation?
Wait. Let's stop recording and start again.
Thank you.